They had my car towed at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning without even asking what was under the cover. I'm coming home from a business trip to find a tow truck hauling away what they thought was junk. The HOA president is standing there with her arms crossed, that smug smile plastered across her face like she just rid the neighborhood of some eyesore. My neighbors? Watching from their windows like this is better than cable TV. The crunch of gravel under my feet echoes as I walk to my empty driveway. That's when I catch the scent of diesel fumes mixing with their expensive landscaping and the thick smell of their own arrogance. See, they assumed they knew what was under that cover. They were wrong, dead wrong. About the car, about me, and especially about who really owns this place. What would you do if your neighbors made that assumption about you? Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from, and have you ever dealt with an HOA from hell? Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in this mess. My name's Marcus, I'm 48, and 6 months ago I was going through the ugliest divorce you can imagine. 20 years of marriage down the drain, and my ex-wife got the McMansion, half my retirement, and custody of our two teenagers who barely looked at me anymore. So there I was, starting over in my late 40s. I needed something smaller, something that felt like home, instead of a monument to my failures. That's when I found this corner townhouse in Willowbrook Estates, 847 homes, $800K to $2.3 million. The kind of place where everyone drives German cars and the grass is so perfect it looks fake. The smell of fresh mulch hits you the moment you drive through those gates. You can hear the distant hum of leaf blowers and the occasional yap of some designer dog that costs more than most people's cars. But what really sold me? The three-car garage. See, I had inherited something that needed proper protection. My Uncle Raymond had passed away the year before, leaving me his pride and joy, a 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB. Now, Uncle Raymond was what you'd call eccentric. Brilliant businessman, but kept his cards close to his chest. He'd always tell me, "Marcus, real value hides in plain sight. Most people see what they expect to see, not what's actually there." Turns out Uncle Raymond had a lot more secrets than just that car. The Ferrari looked rough-faded paint, worn interior, but underneath was a numbers-matching, museum-quality classic with maintenance records going back 30 years. I covered it with a standard gray tarp while researching restoration shops. Nothing suspicious, just protecting it from dust. That's when I met Diane Blackwell. Picture the most stereotypical HOA president you can imagine, then add a BMW X7, workout clothes she never sweats in, and a smile that could cut glass. 52 years old, married to Craig from pharmaceutical sales, two private school kids because public education just isn't what it used to be. Diane's been HOA president for 3 consecutive terms. In my experience, people who cling to small power usually do it because they can't handle anything bigger. Day 3 after moving in, knock on my door. There's Diane with that fake sweet smile. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Just wondering about that vehicle situation in your driveway?" I explain it's a classic car, temporarily covered. Her smile tightens like a wire. Well, we have standards here in Willowbrook. Have you reviewed the covenants? She hands me this unofficial violation notice, nothing legal, but threatening enough. The cheap paper felt like sandpaper between my fingers, and I could smell her overpowering perfume mixing with what I swear was the scent of her own arrogance. That evening, I read every word of those HOA documents. Here's the thing. No specific ban on covered vehicles under 30 days. Diane was fishing, testing if I'd roll over like her previous targets. But she wasn't done. That same night, she starts a neighborhood text chain. New guy thinks rules don't apply to him. Within a week, I'm getting the suburban freeze-out treatment. Conversations stopping when I approach. Cold shoulders at mailboxes. The works. The sound of whispered conversations that died when I walked by became my new soundtrack. I realized this wasn't about my car. This was about Diane establishing dominance over the outsider. Here's what I didn't know yet. Uncle Raymond hadn't just left me a Ferrari. He'd left me something much, much bigger. Something that would turn Diane's little power game completely upside down. But first, she was about to escalate this fight in ways that would make her regret ever knocking on my door. Because in Willowbrook Estates, things weren't quite what they seemed. And Diane Blackwell was about to learn that assumptions can be very, very expensive. Diane wasn't the type to back down from a challenge. 2 weeks after our little doorstep chat, I get a certified letter in the mail. Emergency HOA board meeting 48-hour notice regarding community aesthetic concerns. The meeting location? Diane's house. I've been in enough corporate boardrooms to recognize a power play. Neutral ground exists for a reason, but Diane wanted home field advantage. She was betting I'd be intimidated walking into her territory. The night of the meeting, I pull up to her house, one of those cookie-cutter colonials that screams peaked in high school. The smell of vanilla candles hits you from the driveway, so overwhelming you'd think she was trying to cover up something rotten. Craig answers the door, beer already in hand at 7 p.m. Classy. Inside, she's got this whole kangaroo court set up. 4 board members behind her kitchen island like they're the Supreme Court. One lonely chair facing them for me. The sound of my footsteps echoes off those granite countertops as I sit down, and I can hear Craig lurking somewhere behind me, probably practicing his supportive husband routine. Marcus, Diane begins, sliding a manila folder across the counter like she's revealing classified intel. We've received multiple complaints about your situation. She opens it with theatrical flair. Ring doorbell screenshots, printed neighbor emails, and what looks like a property value study she clearly Googled 10 minutes before I arrived. Property values are at risk, she declares. Children are asking uncomfortable questions. We have standards in Willowbrook. I'm listening to this performance, and honestly, I have to admire the audacity. She's turned my Ferrari into a neighborhood menace. But here's the thing about bullies. They assume everyone's as unprepared as their usual victims. I reach into my briefcase and pull out my own folder. Inside, every page of the Willowbrook HOA covenants, highlighted, annotated, and cross-referenced. The crisp sound of legal documents hitting granite fills that vanilla-poisoned kitchen. Show me the specific violation, Diane. She blinks. The other board members start shifting like kids who didn't study for the test. It's about community standards. I understand standards. That's why I read the actual legal documents. I flipped to section 4.27. Covered vehicles allowed up to 30 days without board approval. Section 6.1.3 requires written notification before violation proceedings. Where's mine? Here's a knowledge nugget for you. Most HOA disputes happen because residents don't actually read their covenants. The documents you signed at closing contain specific procedures that boards must follow, and most don't. Janet, one of the board members, clears her throat. Maybe we should table this pending legal review? Diane's face cycles through 5 shades of red. Her intimidation session just became a civics lesson, and she's not the teacher. Fine, she says through gritted teeth. Tabled pending further investigation. I pack up, thank everyone, and leave. Victory, right? Wrong. Next morning, 3 piles of dog waste strategically placed on my lawn. Anonymous note in my mailbox. Trashy car for trashy people. In 18 months of dog-friendly neighborhoods, this had never happened. But the real escalation started that afternoon. I'm returning from errands when I spot Diane showing a house 2 streets over. Normal real estate stuff, except I hear her pitch. Lovely neighborhood, but we do have some unfortunate new additions affecting the overall aesthetic. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about HOA compliance, it was about business. Diane had been running a sweet little operation, pushing out residents who didn't fit her vision and collecting commissions on the turnover. My resistance wasn't just challenging her authority, it was threatening her profit model. So I did what any reasonable person would do. Went home and installed a comprehensive security system. Cameras covering every angle, cloud backup, motion alerts, the works. Because something told me Diane's next move would be worth recording. But while I was mounting those cameras, my mind kept drifting to Uncle Raymond. He'd always been 3 steps ahead of everyone else. What if he'd anticipated something like this? What if that Ferrari wasn't the only thing he'd left me? That evening, I started digging through his old papers, really digging this time. And buried in a file marked Willowbrook Development 1987, I found something that made me sit down hard in my chair. Uncle Raymond hadn't just bought a car in 1967. He'd been busy in the real estate game too, much busier than I'd ever imagined. The mini twist that would change everything? I was about to discover that Diane Blackwell had been picking a fight with the wrong person entirely. Diane wasn't about to let a little legal embarrassment slow her down. Within 48 hours, she'd pivoted to psychological warfare. She organized a neighborhood watch safety meeting. Everyone invited except me, naturally. I discovered this the way you discover most suburban conspiracies, through my security cameras. Groups of neighbors walking past my house like mourners at a funeral, all carrying identical flyers. The crunch of their footsteps on my driveway gravel sounded different now, judgmental somehow. The next morning, a petition appears, clarifying community vehicle standards. 23 signatures by noon. Craig suddenly Mr. Social, casually mentioning to other husbands during dog walks that unclear standards could hurt everyone's property values. The sound of garage doors slamming whenever I drove by became my new neighborhood theme song. Real mature people, but Diane's masterstroke. She schedules another informal chat and brings legal muscle, her brother-in-law Brandon, supposedly an attorney. I say supposedly because everything about this guy screamed strip mall lawyer trying to play in the big leagues. They corner me at my mailbox Thursday evening. Brandon's wearing a discount suit that fits like a burlap sack, carrying a briefcase held together with hope and duct tape, practicing his serious lawyer face in my car's reflection. Marcus, Diane begins, voice dripping false concern. We need to discuss liability issues your vehicle creates. Brandon clears his throat like he's about to deliver the Gettysburg Address. Multiple residents have expressed safety concerns about unknown vehicle contents. Potential homeowners' insurance implications could affect the entire community. The smell of his drugstore cologne mixing with Diane's desperation was nauseating. Behind us, neighbor kids were laughing in backyards, their innocence a sharp contrast to this legal theater at my curb. 72 hours to remove that cover, Brandon continues, producing an official-looking document that probably came from a Google template, or face legal action to protect community standards. Here's something most people don't know. Anyone can claim HOA representation, but actual authority requires proper board authorization and documentation. Always demand to see the specific board resolution empowering someone to act. Most legal threats are just expensive letterhead covering up hot air. So I did what any tech executive worth his severance package would do. Research. Brandon Kowalski, Esquire, specialized in DUI defense and discount real estate closings. His online reviews were illuminating. 2.5 stars, mostly complaints about missed court dates and unreturned calls. More importantly, I contacted our actual HOA attorney for my purchase documents. Plot twist. Brandon had zero authority to represent anyone, and his legal opinion was worth exactly what I'd paid for it. Friday evening, I'm back at Diane's door, this time with real legal counsel on speakerphone. The doorbell felt different under my finger. I wasn't the one being intimidated anymore. Diane, we need to discuss Brandon's unauthorized practice problem. She opens the door with that practice smile, but I can see panic flickering behind her eyes like a dying light bulb. I don't understand what Your brother-in-law's been playing lawyer without permission. Here's Maria Gonzalez, our actual HOA counsel. Maria's voice crackles through my speaker. Ms. Blackwell, legal representation requires explicit board authorization through my firm. Mr. Kowalski has no standing to make demands or threats. Watching Diane realize she'd been caught was like watching a demolition in slow motion. Craig appears behind her, nervously jingling his keys, and through their open door I spot something fascinating on their kitchen counter. Foreclosure notices. Suddenly, everything clicks. This isn't about community standards. Diane's drowning financially, and her HOA president's salary is probably the only steady income they have. My resistance threatens her entire survival strategy. This is harassment, she sputters, pivoting to victim mode. You're trying to destroy our community. I'm protecting it from fake legal threats, I reply. I need a written apology for the harassment by Sunday, or this goes to the State Bar Ethics Board. The sound of her door slamming echoed through the evening, but it wasn't anger I heard, it was desperation. That weekend brought interesting developments. 3 board members texted requesting private meetings. 2 neighbors stopped by with awkward apologies. Someone created an anonymous Willowbrook Truth social media account exposing board overreach. Diane's power structure was developing stress fractures, but I could smell something dangerous in the air, the acrid scent of cornered animal desperation. When people are drowning, they grab onto anything, including things that will drag them deeper. Monday morning proved me right. Emergency board meeting notice, 24 hours, agenda item about removing disruptive residents. Diane was about to make her biggest mistake yet. She was going all in with marked cards, not realizing I'd been counting the deck this entire time. Diane's emergency board meeting notice hit my mailbox like a declaration of war. 24 hours notice, which by the way violates our HOA bylaws requiring 72 hours minimum. But desperate people don't worry about rules they've been breaking all along. The agenda was beautifully simple. Vote to amend community standards regarding vehicle storage and removing disruptive residents from the community. She was going nuclear, planning to change the rules retroactively to make my Ferrari a violation, then kick me out entirely. The smell of her desperation was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But here's where Diane's real genius showed. She'd recruited proxy votes from her real estate network. People who didn't live in Willowbrook but held powers of attorney from relatives, plus a few of her clients willing to do favors. She was planning to pack the room and ram through her amendments with fake votes. I spent Monday evening doing what any good strategist does. Homework. Cross-referencing the attendee list she'd circulated with county voting records, property ownership databases, and HOA membership rolls. The texture of those printed pages between my fingers felt like evidence building, and it was. Meeting night arrived with all the charm of a public execution. Diane had reserved the community center and filled it with her army of fake residents and real estate cronies. 67% attendance, she claimed smugly, except only 34% were legitimate Willowbrook residents. She's up front looking like she's about to accept an Academy Award, presenting her vehicle amendment with PowerPoint slides and everything. All vehicles must be visible and identifiable at all times, she declares. Daily fines of $50 for non-compliance, effective immediately upon passage. The sound of her laser pointer clicking against the projection screen felt like nails on a chalkboard. Behind me, I could hear Craig whispering to people, probably coaching them on how to vote. This amendment will ensure our community maintains the standards that protect all our property values, Diane continues, gesturing dramatically at photos she'd taken of my covered Ferrari from various angles. I'm sitting in the back, taking detailed notes, recording everything on my phone, Virginia's A1 party consent state, in case you're wondering. Diane's confidence is growing with every nod from her packed audience. She actually thinks she's won. Here's a knowledge nugget most people don't know. HOA proxy votes must be from verified residents who can't attend in person, not random people doing favors for board members. Always demand verification of voting eligibility. Illegitimate proxy votes can invalidate entire meetings and any decisions made. When it comes time for the vote, Diane's smile could light up Las Vegas. 23 votes in favor, 8 opposed. Amendment passes, effective immediately. She's practically glowing as she announces my daily $50 fines start tomorrow, unless I remove my car cover. Any other business? She asks, looking around the room like a queen surveying her kingdom. I stand up slowly, my chair creaking in the suddenly quiet room. I'd like a copy of the official vote tally and attendee verification list. Her smile flickers. That's not necessary. Actually, it is. I'll need to verify voting eligibility with county records as required by state HOA oversight regulations. The sound of nervous shuffling fills the room. Several of her proxy voters are suddenly very interested in their phones, and I can smell the fear starting to mix with that community center's industrial carpet odor. Motion to adjourn, Craig calls out quickly. Too late, buddy. That night, I cross-checked every attendee address with voter registration records. 11 people who voted didn't live in Willowbrook Estates. 3 more were Diane's relatives using their parents' old addresses. The amendment vote wasn't just questionable, it was completely fraudulent. But Diane wasn't done. Thursday morning, there's an official violation notice under my door. Demand for immediate cover removal plus a $200 administrative fee. Daily $50 fines starting in 48 hours. And here's the kicker towing authorization if my vehicle remains non-compliant. She'd just handed me a smoking gun. I spent that day compiling my evidence packet, fraudulent voting documentation, unauthorized proxy verification, bylaw violations, and harassment timeline. Everything organized, cross-referenced, and ready for submission to the state HOA Oversight Board. I also called Angela Torres, the Channel 7 investigative reporter who specializes in HOA abuse stories. Let's just say she was very interested in a story about proxy vote fraud and board member embezzlement. But I held back on sending anything. Because while I was organizing all this evidence, I kept thinking about that file folder I'd found in Uncle Raymond's papers. Willowbrook Development, 1987. Time to see what other surprises Uncle Raymond had left me. The mini twist that would change everything? I was about to discover that Diane hadn't just been harassing a random neighbor. She'd been picking a fight with someone who had a lot more power in this community than she could ever imagine. That Friday night, I finally opened Uncle Raymond's Willowbrook Development 1987 folder with a glass of bourbon and my reading glasses. What I found inside made me set down that glass very carefully and read everything twice. Uncle Raymond hadn't just bought a Ferrari in 1967. He'd been playing a much longer game. The documents were crisp, professional, and absolutely mind-blowing. Meridian Holdings, LLC, incorporated in Delaware, 1985. Primary asset, 847 acres of farmland purchased in Fairfax County for $340,000 in 1987. Development partner, Willowbrook Construction Group. Total project investment, $78 million. Uncle Raymond's ownership stake, 67%. I'm reading these papers, and the smell of old tobacco and leather from Uncle Raymond's briefcase is mixing with my bourbon, and suddenly everything makes sense. The Ferrari was never the real inheritance. It was just the bait to get me to dig deeper. Cross-referencing the corporate filings with my property deed revealed something that made my hands shake. Every single homeowner in Willowbrook Estates, including Diane Blackwell, was technically my tenant. Uncle Raymond had structured the development as a ground lease community. The land underneath every house, every street, every common area belonged to Meridian Holdings. Homeowners bought their houses but leased the land through 47-year agreements. Every monthly HOA fee included a ground lease payment that went straight to Meridian Holdings, straight to me. The texture of those legal documents felt different now, heavier somehow. These weren't just papers, they were proof that I owned the ground Diane walked on. Here's the financial reality that made my head spin. I'd been receiving $127,000 per month in ground lease payments for 18 months, automatically deposited into Uncle Raymond's old business account that I'd never bothered to check. Total accumulation. $2.3 million, just sitting there earning interest. Diane's HOA embezzlement? She'd been stealing from my company, but the legal implications were even more stunning. The HOA had no authority over landowner rights. Every vote, every fine, every threat Diane had made was legally meaningless. I could terminate ground leases for harassment, restrict access to common areas, even control utility easements. I called Maria Gonzalez, Uncle Raymond's estate attorney, who'd been quietly managing Meridian Holdings all these years. Her voice carried a smile when I finally asked the right questions. "Your uncle always said this day would come," she explained. "He knew someone would eventually challenge your right to exist peacefully in your own community. He wanted you to learn patience first, then use power wisely." The emotional weight hit me like a truck. Uncle Raymond had orchestrated this entire lesson. He'd known that buying into an upscale community would eventually trigger conflict with small-minded people like Diane. The covered Ferrari wasn't just a car, it was a test. Maria continued. Diane Blackwell has been harassing her own landlord while embezzling from his company. That constitutes grounds for lease termination under Section 12 of the Ground Lease Agreement. I could end this immediately. One phone call and Diane would be facing forced sale of her house at a massive loss. But Uncle Raymond's note, tucked behind the corporate documents, gave me pause. Some people respect power. Others respect justice. Use wisely. The irony was delicious. Diane had been fighting to control property she didn't own, making threats with authority she didn't possess, while stealing money from the very person she was trying to intimidate. But I had a choice to make. Swift revenge, or a teaching moment that could benefit the entire community. Uncle Raymond had given me the tools for both. The strategic question wasn't whether I had power, it was how to use it. Saturday morning, I'm sitting in my kitchen with Uncle Raymond's files spread across the granite countertop like a war room briefing. The smell of strong coffee mixing with the musty scent of decades-old legal documents created this weird sense of past and present colliding. Time to assemble my team. First call, Maria Gonzalez, Uncle Raymond's estate attorney and now my secret weapon. She arrives at noon with a briefcase full of corporate documents and a smile that could cut steel. "Your uncle would be proud," she says, spreading out ground lease termination procedures. "Harassment and intimidation are explicit violations. We have cause." Second recruit, Detective Jake Morrison from 3 houses down, retired Fairfax County, now my most valuable neighbor. Jake's been watching Diane's escalation with professional interest. "I've been documenting her harassment pattern. he tells me, pulling out a composition notebook. Timestamps, witnesses, photographic evidence. This woman's creating a textbook stalking case. The texture of Jake's careful handwriting on those pages felt like justice taking shape. Third team member, Sarah Chen, forensic accountant, and my ex-colleague from the tech days. Sarah arrives with her laptop and that shark smile she gets when she smells financial fraud. HOA embezzlement is my specialty, she grins. Give me 24 hours with those records. Sunday evening, we're back around my kitchen table for the strategy session. Sarah's spreadsheet analysis covers my laptop screen like a roadmap to Diane's destruction. Systematic theft, she announces. Fake consulting payments, kickbacks from contractors, inflated maintenance fees, total embezzlement, $94,000 over 2 years. Jake slides his evidence folder across the table. Pattern escalation from verbal harassment to property damage to false legal threats. Any prosecutor would call this organized intimidation. Maria taps her pen against the lease termination documents. Ground lease violations include harassment of the landowner. 30-day notice required, but given the documented pattern, we can expedite. But here's where Uncle Raymond's real genius showed itself. I pull out Tommy Reeves's authentication report on the Ferrari Classic Car Appraiser, ASA certified, 40 years in the business. Car's worth $2.1 million at auction, Tommy had written. Original invoice from 1967, $11,400. Your uncle bought a masterpiece and let everyone think it was junk. The psychological warfare potential was beautiful. Diane had been fighting to remove what she thought was trash, never imagining it was worth more than most people's houses. Here's a knowledge nugget that could save you thousands. Ground lease agreements give landowners ultimate authority over tenant behavior, even in HOA communities. Most residents never realize they're actually renting the land under their houses. Maria explains the legal strategy. Phase 1, car revelation during her next harassment incident. Phase 2, present financial evidence to the board. Phase 3, ownership disclosure at a community meeting. Phase 4, media coverage if she doesn't back down. Jake outlines the counter-surveillance setup. Additional cameras covering all property angles, body-worn recording devices, encrypted digital backups. We document everything from here forward. The community intelligence network was already paying dividends. 3 other residents had contacted me privately about Diane's harassment campaigns. Jake had identified a pattern. She targeted anyone who didn't fit her vision of appropriate neighbors, then pushed them out through systematic intimidation. Sarah's forensic analysis revealed the financial leverage I now controlled: land ownership, utility easements, common area access, HOA fund sources. You don't just own the land, she explains. You control the infrastructure that makes this community function. Here's another knowledge nugget. Most HOA disputes can be resolved by researching underlying property ownership. Many residents don't realize who actually owns their land. Tommy arrives with the final piece of the puzzle: complete Ferrari restoration documentation. Numbers matching engine, original paint codes, service records dating back 50 years. This car's museum quality, he confirms. Your uncle maintained it perfectly under that cover. The media strategy was crucial. Angela Torres from Channel 7 had already expressed interest, but timing would be everything. HOA president embezzling while harassing actual property owner, Maria muses. That's primetime material. But the psychological preparation was just as important. I practiced calm delivery of the ownership revelation with Maria's coaching, role-played various Diane responses, prepared for potential retaliation. The technical understanding was overwhelming. I controlled water rights, sewer access, road maintenance, landscaping contracts. The HOA became powerless when the landowner asserted legal authority. As Sunday evening wound down, we'd created a comprehensive battle plan. Maria would draft lease violation notices. Jake would coordinate surveillance. Sarah would prepare financial evidence presentations. Tommy would stage the Ferrari authentication reveal. The sound of papers shuffling as we organized, everything felt like destiny taking shape. Uncle Raymond had left me more than inheritance. He'd left me the tools to teach an entire community about respect, justice, and the consequences of assumptions. Phase 1 would start with Diane's next move. And knowing Diane, that wouldn't take long. Diane's desperation reached peak stupidity at 5:47 a.m. Tuesday morning. I'm awakened by the rumble of a diesel engine and the hydraulic whine of a tow truck backing into my driveway. Through my bedroom window, I watch her directing the operation like some suburban Napoleon, Craig filming everything on his phone for documentation. The tow operator big guy, probably seen every kind of car drama imaginable, approaches my covered Ferrari with professional caution. I slip on my bathrobe, grab my coffee mug, and walk outside like I'm checking the morning paper. Jake's already on his porch with his camera, retired cop instincts kicking in. "Morning, folks," I call out pleasantly. "Beautiful day for Grand Theft Auto." The tow operator stops mid-stride. "Sir, I have authorization from the HOA. Mind if I see that paperwork?" He hands me a generic work order signed by Diane, claiming abandoned vehicle creating safety hazard. The cheap paper feels flimsy between my fingers, nothing like the substantial legal documents I've been handling lately. Diane emerges from Craig's BMW like a conquering hero, clipboard raised like a weapon. "Finally enforcing community standards, Marcus." Her voice carries that shrill edge of someone who thinks they're winning. "Daily fines total $350 now, plus towing fees. Should have listened." The sound of neighbors' garage doors opening echoes through the morning air as word spreads. Mrs. Patterson from across the street, the Martinez family. Even the teenagers who usually sleep until noon, everyone's coming out to watch this suburban circus. "Before you tow anything," I say, taking a slow sip of my coffee, "maybe you'd like to see what you're removing?" I walk to the Ferrari, my hand resting on the car cover's corner. "Since you're so concerned about property values." The gathering crowd grows larger. Kids pressing against their parents, phones appearing like magic, the whole neighborhood holding its breath. "What's under here, Marcus?" little Sarah Martinez asks, her voice cutting through the morning tension. "Why don't we find out together?" I pull the cover away in one fluid motion. The gasps that follow sound like a small crowd witnessing a magic trick. Morning sunlight hits the Ferrari's restored Rosso Corsa paint, chrome wire wheels gleaming, every curve and line screaming Italian perfection. "Holy hell," the tow operator whistles low. "That's a real Ferrari." Diane's face cycles through confusion, shock, then mounting rage like watching someone's soul die in real time. Craig stops filming, his phone dropping to his side. The neighbors who've been giving me the cold shoulder for weeks suddenly look like they want to crawl under rocks. "It's beautiful, Marcus," Sarah Martinez breathes, her kindergarten teacher instincts appreciating genuine craftsmanship. "How much is something like that worth?" one of the husbands asks. I produce Tommy's authentication paperwork with theatrical timing. Restoration estimate puts it around $2.1 million. The tow operator is already backing away, hands raised. "I'm not touching a $2 million car. Lady, you didn't tell me this was a classic Ferrari." But Diane, bless her heart, doubles down. "Doesn't matter what it's worth. Rules apply to everyone equally." The crowd's energy shifts. You can actually feel their sympathy evaporating like morning dew. Craig's pulling at her arm, whispering urgently, but Diane's too far gone to recognize the cliff she's standing on. "Anyone else think this looks like junk?" I ask the gathering crowd. Nervous laughter ripples through the neighbors. Kids are asking their parents if they can touch the car. The social tide has turned completely, and Diane's standing alone on the beach watching her authority wash away. That's when I drop the first bomb. "Diane, there's something else you should know." I pull out my phone, Maria already on speed dial. "You've been trying to tow your landlord's car." The confusion on her face is almost worth the 18 months of harassment. Almost. "I own the land your house sits on through ground lease agreement. Every monthly HOA payment you make includes rent to my company, Meridian Holdings. You've been harassing your own tenant landlord while stealing from my business." The sound of Diane's world crumbling is audible, a sharp intake of breath like someone just punched her in the solar plexus. Craig goes pale, finally understanding the financial implications. The crowd murmurs among themselves, cell phones out, Google searches happening in real time. "That's impossible," she whispers. I show her Uncle Raymond's corporate documents, officially notarized, completely legitimate. 67% ownership of the land under this entire community. "Your embezzlement scheme? You've been stealing from me." The tow truck is already pulling away without the Ferrari. Neighbors are approaching to apologize, to examine the car, to distance themselves from Diane's sinking ship. Social media is exploding. Jake's video already posted, the Willowbrook Truth account sharing real-time updates. But I can smell something dangerous in the air, the acrid scent of a cornered animal about to do something spectacularly stupid. Diane's nuclear meltdown arrived that same evening with all the subtlety of a car bomb. Emergency board meeting notice posted on every door by 6 p.m. agenda items that would make Stalin blush. Removing fraudulent residents from community and legal action against disruptive elements threatening property values. She'd gone full scorched earth, claiming I'd deceived the community about my financial status and manipulated property records through criminal fraud. The smell of her desperation was so thick you could bottle it and sell it as anxiety cologne. But here's where Diane's real evil genius showed. She wasn't just planning to kick me out. She was going to destroy my reputation first. Her real estate network became a gossip machine, spreading stories about con artists with stolen cars and probable criminal money. The Whisper campaign painted me as everything from a drug dealer to a tax evader. Meanwhile, Sarah's forensic accounting had uncovered the brutal truth about Diane's finances. 3 months behind on mortgage payments, foreclosure proceedings already filed, real estate business circling the drain thanks to market downturn. This wasn't about HOA compliance anymore. This was about survival. Wednesday evening's emergency meeting felt like walking into an ambush. Diane had reserved the community center and packed it with her usual suspects. Craig looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, Brandon the fake lawyer sweating through his polyester suit, and 2 remaining board loyalists who still believed her propaganda. The smell of industrial carpet mixed with fear and cheap coffee created this nauseating atmosphere of suburban warfare. Angela Torres from Channel 7 was, coincidentally, in the parking lot with her news crew, tipped off by someone who definitely wasn't me. Diane opens with a prepared speech that would make McCarthy proud. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been infiltrated by someone who deliberately misled us about his identity and intentions. She's got PowerPoint slides now, photos of my Ferrari, screenshots of property records, even a timeline of my deceptive behavior. The sound of her laser pointer clicking against the projection screen feels like a countdown to her own destruction. Marcus Reynolds has been masquerading as a legitimate resident while running some kind of elaborate real estate scam, she declares, gesturing at carefully cropped documents that tell half the story. Brandon stands up, legal pad in hand like he's about to cross-examine a murder suspect. We have evidence of fraudulent property claims and possible identity theft. The board moves to revoke his residency eligibility pending investigation. I'm sitting in the back with Maria, both of us taking detailed notes while Diane hangs herself with her own rope. The crowd is buying it, worried murmurs, suspicious glances in my direction, the whole community mob mentality kicking into gear. Any resident engaging in criminal fraud, Diane continues, forfeits their right to live in our community. We're voting tonight to begin removal proceedings. That's when I decide she's had enough rope. I stand up slowly, the metal chair scraping against the floor like fingernails on a chalkboard. Diane, before you call the police on your landlord, maybe you should see the complete financial records. Maria opens her briefcase with theatrical precision, pulling out Sarah's forensic analysis. The rustle of official documents cuts through the room's tension like a knife through butter. Ladies and gentlemen, I address the crowd, I'd like to present evidence of systematic embezzlement by your HOA president. The PowerPoint slides change Sarah's spreadsheets, replacing Diane's propaganda. Fake consulting payments, inflated maintenance contracts, kickback arrangements, all documented with bank records and corporate filings. $94,000 stolen over 2 years, I continue. From Meridian Holdings, the company that owns 67% of the land your houses sit on. The crowd's energy shifts like a physical wave. Diane's face goes through about 17 shades of pale as the financial evidence destroys her credibility in real time. That's when Brandon makes his fatal mistake. This is all fabricated. Marcus Reynolds doesn't own anything in this community. Maria stands up, introducing herself with quiet authority. Maria Gonzalez, estate attorney for Meridian Holdings, LLC. Here are certified copies of the corporate ownership documents, ground lease agreements, and state filings. The sound of papers being distributed fills the room. Neighbors checking their own property deeds, whispered conversations about lease payments they never understood, the awful realization that they've been watching their own landlord get harassed for months. Motion for no confidence in the current president, calls out Janet from the board. Seconded, comes from 3 different voices. Craig is physically pulling Diane toward the exit as Channel 7's cameras capture her meltdown. This isn't over, she shrieks. I'll sue everyone, The door slams behind them, but the damage is done. Board vote. 5-1 for Diane's removal, with Craig abstaining because he was already in the parking lot. The immediate aftermath was swift. Emergency election scheduled, community vote to reimburse stolen funds, and Diane's real estate license investigation triggered by media coverage. But I could smell something else in the air, the sweet scent of justice finally being served. 3 weeks later, the community healing meeting arrived with all the fanfare of a small-town election. I pull up to the community center in the Ferrari, now the neighborhood's celebrity vehicle, and the sound of that V12 engine purring draws kids to the windows like moths to flame. Angela Torres and her Channel 7 crew are back for the follow-up story, cameras rolling as residents file into the packed community center. The smell of fresh coffee and nervous energy fills the air, mixed with the scent of democracy actually working for once. Diane is notably absent, her house sporting a bright red for sale sign that might as well read foreclosure special. Craig's been keeping a low profile, probably practicing his "I was just following orders" defense for the divorce attorney. The meeting opens with Sarah Martinez, our new president, the kindergarten teacher who everyone actually trusts, calling for order with a wooden gavel that sounds like justice knocking on the door. First order of business, she announces, installing transparent governance to prevent future abuses. Jake Morrison takes his oath as security liaison, his retired detective credentials lending instant credibility to our reformed board. The contrast with Diane's reign of terror couldn't be more obvious. These are people who serve the community, not themselves. When Sarah calls me to the podium for remarks, the texture of the worn wooden surface under my hands feels different than Diane's kitchen counter intimidation sessions. This is voluntary, respectful, collaborative. 3 weeks ago, I begin, my voice carrying clearly through the packed room, we learned that assumptions can be very dangerous things. The audience listens with the kind of attention you rarely get in suburban settings. Kids sitting on parents' laps, teenagers actually looking up from their phones, neighbors who gave me the cold shoulder now hanging on every word. My Uncle Raymond left me more than a car and some land. He left me a lesson about patience, about letting people reveal their true character before making judgments. I pause, looking around the room at faces that have gone from suspicious to apologetic to genuinely interested in building something better. Today, I'm announcing the Raymond Chen Memorial Fund, named for my uncle's full name, which he kept private during his lifetime. The rustle of program pages turning fills the momentary silence as people check the meeting agenda, not seeing this listed anywhere. $2.3 million in accumulated ground lease funds will establish an annual scholarship program for local high school graduates pursuing engineering and business degrees. The applause starts slowly, then builds like a wave rolling through the community center. Angela Torres signals her cameraman to get reaction shots. This is the kind of positive ending that makes for good television. $50,000 annually, managed by an elected community committee, with our first recipient being Jake Morrison's granddaughter, who's studying mechanical engineering at Virginia Tech. Jake's eyes well up as the crowd gives him a standing ovation. The sound of chairs scraping and hands clapping echoes off the community center walls, and I catch the scent of happy tears mixing with coffee and hope. But the real revelation comes next. Additionally, we're establishing a community improvement fund. New playground equipment, organic garden space for food bank donations, and an annual classic car show to raise money for local charities. More applause, but I hold up my hand for the finale. And because actions should have consequences, we're implementing mandatory financial transparency, monthly reports, open books, and independent auditing to ensure this never happens again. Here's the knowledge nugget that could save your community. Document everything during HOA disputes. Video, audio, and financial records become powerful tools for legal resolution, but more importantly, they become the foundation for rebuilding trust. Angela Torres approaches the podium for the media moment. Marcus, how does it feel to turn conflict into community benefit? My uncle always said real wealth isn't what you own, it's knowing who you can trust. This community just proved they're worth trusting. The Ferrari sits outside in the parking lot, now a symbol of transformation rather than conflict. Kids are lined up to sit in the driver's seat, while their parents share stories of their own HOA nightmares from other neighborhoods. The irony is beautiful. Diane's harassment backfired so completely that it triggered positive changes spreading to other developments through media coverage. Her attempt to destroy one person's peace created a model for HOA reform that's being studied by housing developers across the region. As the meeting winds down, neighbors approach to share their own stories of intimidation they'd been too afraid to report. Pattern harassment targeting anyone who didn't fit Diane's narrow vision of appropriate residence finally exposed and ended. The sensory victory is overwhelming. Children's laughter during Ferrari engine demonstrations, the smell of barbecue smoke from our impromptu celebration, warm handshakes and genuine hugs from people who'd shunned me weeks earlier. Justice served with a side of community healing, exactly what Uncle Raymond would have wanted. The sound of sunset reflecting off perfectly restored chrome tells me this story is ending exactly right. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates graces the cover of Virginia Living magazine as a model HOA community property. Values up 12%, community satisfaction through the roof, and my Ferrari, now a regular fixture at regional car shows raising funds for local charities. The Raymond Chen Memorial Fund awarded its first scholarships in May. 5 local students pursuing engineering and business degrees, with Jake Morrison's granddaughter leading the pack at Virginia Tech. Standing on that graduation stage, watching her accept the check, I could almost feel Uncle Raymond's approval mixing with the smell of fresh flowers and new beginnings. The community garden project became something beautiful: residents growing vegetables for the food bank, kids learning where food actually comes from, neighbors collaborating instead of competing. The sound of children laughing while picking tomatoes has replaced the whispered conversations and slamming garage doors of Diane's reign. Speaking of Diane, she relocated to North Carolina, where real estate licensing requirements are apparently more forgiving. The marriage survived barely, and Craig's found steady work in medical device sales. Occasionally, anonymous donations appear in the scholarship fund, and I have my suspicions about their source. Redemption takes many forms. My personal life found its rhythm too. Sarah Martinez and I started dating after the dust settled, nothing rushed, just 2 adults who discovered they enjoy each other's company during community planning meetings. The kids approve, which matters more than I expected it would. The Ferrari restoration reached museum quality, now valued at $2.4 million according to Tommy's latest appraisal. But its real value is symbolic. Transformation from hidden treasure to community centerpiece, just like Uncle Raymond planned all along. Here's the final knowledge nugget that ties everything together. Always research property ownership history before buying into HOA communities. You might discover unexpected rights, responsibilities, or opportunities to create positive change. The ripple effects keep expanding. Angela Torres won a regional Emmy for her investigative series on HOA abuse, and our story became a case study in journalism schools about finding human interest angles in local politics. 3 other communities have contacted me for consultation on similar issues. Turns out HOA tyranny is more common than anyone wants to admit. Maria's law firm now specializes in ground lease and property rights disputes, helping other landowners discover forgotten assets and authority. Jake started a security consulting business for residential associations. Sarah's accounting practice expanded into HOA financial auditing. Everyone found purpose in the aftermath. The broader social impact exceeded my wildest expectations. Our annual classic car show draws hundreds of visitors, raising over $75,000 last year for homeless services and food banks. The community festival brings together 5 neighboring developments, building bridges across traditional suburban boundaries. But the most satisfying change? Monthly HOA meetings where residents actually participate. Transparent financial reporting, collaborative decision-making, and genuine community spirit. We transformed from Diane's dictatorship into functional democracy, proving that small-scale governance can work when people care about fairness over power. The personal healing surprised me most. My relationship with my teenagers improved dramatically once they saw me standing up for principles instead of just complaining about problems. They spend equal time at both houses now, and my ex-wife grudgingly admits I've grown during this experience. Uncle Raymond's wisdom fully integrated into my daily life. Patience over reaction, preparation over emotion, justice over revenge. His letter, found in the Ferrari's glove compartment, said it perfectly. Real victory improves everyone's situation. The sensory conclusion feels right. Ferrari purring as I drive to speaking engagements, fresh flowers blooming in our community garden, smooth steering wheel under my hands as I navigate toward new adventures. The rearview mirror shows grateful neighbors waving goodbye, but forward momentum carries more promise than backward glances. So here's my challenge to you. What's your HOA horror story? Share it in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else recognize the warning signs before things escalate. If this story helped you understand your property rights or gave you hope that justice can prevail against petty tyrants, hit that subscribe button. We've got more David versus Goliath stories coming your way. Next week, the woman who discovered her subdivision pool actually belonged to her grandmother's estate. Trust me, you'll want to see how that turns out. Remember, knowledge is power, but patience is strategy. Sometimes the best revenge is living well and helping your community do the same. The sound of that Ferrari's engine echoing through improved neighborhoods tells me Uncle Raymond would be proud of what his lesson accomplished.
Another day, another HOA drama wrapped up. If this story made you shake your head or fist pump in victory, smash that like button, share your own HOA experience below, and subscribe so you'll never miss another battle in the burbs.